Dissecting the Osu Institution. Dissecting the Osu Institution. The bells of freedom toll for the outcasts of Israel with revelations about the Israelite priesthood. I donated 3 copies of this monograph to the University of California, Riverside yesterday because the Igbo nation, the Igbo people, will be redeemed by God, of course, but acting through us, because God cannot come to the world and join us humans in our mundane activities. By the little I do here, the little Emeka Maduewesi does there, Emeka Duru, Francis Duru, Zarabiodo Matthias, Engineer Ezogu, Nze Charleston Okafor, Nze Iyile, Nze Rabbi Igbo Hebrew, Nze Rabbi Zuonu Jonathan, Nze Rabbi Osuji, Nze Rabbi Luke, Chinwoba, Juliusville, our sister, the little each person contributes, will see to the improvement of our long-suffering people. That's why I took the 2 books. Not the 2 books, but the 1 book, 3 copies of it to the University of California, Riverside, so that authentic examinations of our culture will begin to be placed, begin to become manifest in the American society, which is the most important society in the world today, or the most powerful. America needs to know about the Igbos, because the Igbos and the America have one thing they share. America is a vibrant country struggling every day to improve its democracy, to maintain its democracy. The Igbos produce the oldest representative participatory democracy in the world. Both peoples should be partners in progress, and moreover, there are 2 or 3 strands of people that are foundational members of the American society who are of Igbo provenance. Fully 25 to 30% of the African American population are of Igbo stock. Sephardic Ashkenazi Jews are kings of the Igbo people as Israelites. Of course, there's the Karaite and the Samaritan communities in the United States will be small, but they are present here. So these are communities which are in some ways foundational, because after the Native Americans, the next group of people that came included these groups I mentioned. There are groups that the Igbos have a lot in common with. So the earlier they begin to have authentic information about the Igbos, the better. That's why I donated 3 copies of this book to the library of this university. The book talks about some people who were members of the Israelite priesthood, a group that disappeared in the culture, in the cultures of all the groups that assert descent from the Israelites apart from the Igbos. The Igbos call them the Osu. If you want to get an introductory examination of this group, read Things Fall Apart. You would find them discussed there. But I will give us a little information about them, starting from the role, who they were in biblical Israel. God, the supreme being that Igbos know as Chukwu, provided that if an Israelite is in fear for one reason or the other, that if that Israelite heads into any of the sanctuaries in Israel, that Israelite could no longer be molested by the pursuer. We find instances in the Bible itself where some Israelites wanted to benefit from this tradition, from this provision that Chukwu himself provided for. If you are very familiar with the book of Samuel and the book of Kings, you would know General Joab, the intrepid army commander, David's chief of army staff, David's nephew. He took the life of a fellow Israelite in cold blood, and also he supported one of the elder brothers of Solomon when the tussle for the kingship ensued. So he had reasons to fear Solomon. When Solomon became king, he fled into the temple. But because he had taken the life of another Israelite, Solomon could ignore that provision that gave him automatic immunity from pursuers. So Solomon insisted that he should be brought out from the house of the Lord and killed. This tradition, I repeat, survived only in the Igbo world. It didn't survive in any other stream of the Israelites. Of course, there are reasons why it survived. The Igbos constitute the largest group of Israelites in the world, and for a very long time, that may amount to up to 500 years, the Igbos had a lot of power, including land, in the portion of West Africa that we know as Igbo land, so they could transfer a lot of traditions of Israel that could only be observed in the land into the land that they occupied in West Africa. So, essentially, during the transatlantic slave trade, a lot of Igbos, in fear that they would be enslaved, entered the sanctuaries. And the Igbo religion was so strong then that the pursuers did not go after them. And they became sacrosanct. They became servants of God. They began to work alongside the priests. Their jobs in the sanctuaries of the Igbos included slaughtering of the animals brought for sacrifice and assisting the priests generally. And interestingly, among the Igbo, they were not to be molested. It is an abomination for an Igbo to molest them even verbally. And we have an instance of a case in the Bible where they were mistreated. The group in question now were not Israelites, but they benefited from the same provision. They were Gibeonites. They didn't want to fight a war with Israel, so they deceived Joshua, the successor to Moses, claimed that they were from a distant land, and Joshua gave them immunity, only to discover afterwards that they were from a nearby location. So Joshua said, Henceforth you will be hewers of wood and drawers of water in the house of my God. And King Saul, when he became sick, killed some members of this community whom Joshua had provided immunity for, in addition to the immunity that God gave them. Joshua said, "You would not fight us, we would not fight you, but you will serve in the house of my God, and for that you will be safe." God brought out this provision so that these people will maintain their integrity, maintain their dignity, and maintain their safety. Saul went and killed some of them. When David came to power, because the commandment had to be obeyed, they were given permission to retaliate against the family of Saul. This is the tradition we find in Igbo land. The Osu could not be molested. He could not be abused even verbally. A lot of Igbos have forgotten everything, but they have not forgotten this one. They have not forgotten that the Osu could not be molested. So, listeners, the Osu could not be molested in biblical Israel. The Osu could not be molested in Igbo land. Meanwhile, there are some traditions in other lands that they are obverse, that their reverse could be placed side by side with what we are looking at. In India, you have a class. I think they are called the Harijan, if I'm right. I needed to have consulted some books before heading into the Indian section, but so be it. I do not want to use the term untouchable. They are not exactly to be compared to the Osu as a similar tradition, because while the Osu were auxiliary priests in the Igbo religion and in the Israelite religion, in India, they could not even be allowed into the places of worship. And they could be mistreated, and they were mistreated, and they were always mistreated. Even in postmodern times, if the shadow of an untouchable falls across an Indian of higher caste, he could be killed. While in the case of the Igbos, of course, there were no castes. There were no castes. Everybody was equal. Thank you.